What's up guys, in this video I ranked every single enchant from worst to best based on how valuable they are in PVE. Now keep in mind I primarily do layer 2, but I will be taking hell mode into account for a couple of these enchants. Starting off the lowest tier, I'm putting all the enchants that are actually bad for you to have on your weapon. Now the worst enchant on this list in my opinion has to be Curse of Yanshul. Not because it's a bad enchant, but there's a small chance for it to proc on yourself, causing damage and therefore ruining your chain of perfection. So due to that RNG, I'd say it's the worst enchant for layer 2, in my opinion. Similar to Curse of Yanshul, Bloodthirsty also has self-inflicted damage, which again cancels your chain of perfection stacks and makes it really annoying for bosses like Chaser, where you need to break his jars and it costs you an M1 every time you have to break a jar, so you can see why that would be an issue. The next tier is going to have all the enchants that have no effect on PvE. If you have one of these enchants, it's basically the same as having no enchant. The enchants in this tier are Solar, Elastic, Nemesis, Stone, and Curse of the Unbidden, in no particular order. These next enchants in this tier are somewhat decent, but only in specific situations, or are just outclassed by better enchants. Gluttony is almost useless, but it's nice to have full hunger if you don't have carnivore, or if you're using a Hungry Flames build, so it just barely makes it out of the D tier. Metal is similar to Gluttony in that it keeps your armor at max, but it has no combat benefit. Breaking natural armor isn't useful for enemies during hell mode, and it seems to have no effect on bosses during layer 2. Blazing also seems to have little to no effect in PvE, and I think that's due to flames not having PvE scaling, but I could be wrong there. For my testing, it seemed not to have any impact on damage, but it could be useful with Lava Serpent builds, and the flame does let you grip Chaser if you do enough damage. Providence Thorns and Obfuscation are also going in this tier. I didn't really bother testing them because they don't have an impact on the Atheron fight. Defer does increase your damage by a good amount, however it applies that damage over time, meaning that while you could technically defeat a boss in 3 less hits, it's still going to take you the same amount of time to kill it as if you had no enchant on your weapon. This is also completely useless on Chaser, since he becomes invincible while in the air, so you lose out on potential damage over time that you would have gotten on other bosses. I'd say it's overhyped, but it's still the best enchant in this tier. Enchants in this next tier either have a noticeable damage buff, or provide a useful benefit besides damage. Vampirism, while heavily nerfed in layer 2, is still somewhat useful for healing during Chaser. It also keeps your blood bar up during hell mode, and provides decent healing there. It just barely makes it into the A tier. Seer is useful for bosses in layer 2, providing a decent damage buff. However, it's not as useful in hell mode since by the time you apply full pen stacks to your enemy, they're likely already dead. Storm/Stormbreaker both provide a decent damage buff when used with Nullifying Clarity, as well as convert your damage to lightning, which could be useful against certain attuned enemies. This would be one of the best enchants in the game if the Rain Spire could be used in layer 2 or the depths, but because it cannot, it stays here in A tier. Tears of the Eden Kite provides a decent damage buff, especially with faster weapons that flourish more often. The bubbles also potentially proc chain stacks, though that could use some testing. Overall, it's a pretty decent enchant. Heroism, while theoretically providing the best damage buff in the game, is way too inconsistent to be useful in my experience. Staying at max HP for an entire boss fight is unrealistic, and even then, the damage buff feels like it's worse than all the S tier enchants. So, it's staying in A tier, where it belongs. At the top of A tier, I'm putting NLK. I can't speak for hell mode, but the additional healing in layer 2 makes it a breeze, especially if you're just learning how to do it. NLK even let me nearly beat Atheron at power 1. Its insanity downside also doesn't proc in layer 2, so it's pretty much just Vampirism, but better. At the top of this list is going to be S tier. These are the best PvE enchants. If you have these, then you're in a good spot. Chilling, while nerfed, is still a solid pick for PvE. For my testing, it had one of the fastest Atheron kills, so you can't go wrong there. However, other enchants have benefits outside of just being a damage increase, meaning that it places lowest in the S tier. Before the Chilling nerf, Umbral Knight was the second best enchant for killing Chaser. And now that we know that the Umbral Knight proc actually grants a stack of perfection, it's even better. Plus, it looks way cooler than Chilling, so that's always a bonus. Detonation is a solid pick due to its additional AoE in hell mode, and the raw damage increase you get, allowing you to kill Atheron very quickly. The explosion also scales well with damage modifiers, so you will be dealing a lot more damage depending on how many you have. Overall, a solid pick, just please don't use this with the group in layer 2. Finally, we have the last 2 enchants, and you might be surprised. Both of these enchants were the only 2 to be able to kill Atheron in 35 hits, those being Astral and Grim. Obviously, Astral gives you a large PvE buff, and that buff is always active, making it a little bit more consistent than Grim. However, this enchant is impossible to get, so good luck. Good luck finding it. Besides Astral, Grim is the new undisputed king of the enchants. Out of all the enchants I tested, Grim was the only one able to kill Atheron in 35 hits, other than Astral. I don't actually understand it, but somehow this is now the best enchant in the game. So yeah, I want to see everyone using Grim from now on, since it's clearly undefeated. It is the king of PvE. Astral is just awful in comparison. And yeah, those are my rankings for every single PvE enchant in the game. Let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree, and if you have any new information based on which ones are better. I'd love to hear it. Thanks, and goodbye.